Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going back in time, back to 19th century France.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah, this is a case that hit it all scandal, intrigue, and
Mm-hmm.
a whole lot of arsenic.
Can't forget the arsenic.
Exactly. It's the captivating case of Marie Lafarge,
Yeah.
the so-called arsenic wife.
Oh, this one is a classic, isn't it? A real blend of love, betrayal,
Mm.
and the very beginnings of modern forensics.
Yeah, and you know what's crazy? Back then, arsenic was like,
Easy to get a hold of.
oh yeah, super easy. They even called it inheritance powder. Yikes.
Really makes you think, doesn't it?
It does, and in the middle of all this is Marie.
A Parisian socialite.
Right. Promise a life of luxury.
And instead...
She ends up at Le Glandier,
Oh, like one day.
this crumbling estate miles from everything she knows.
A far cry from the Parisian lifestyle.
Talk about a rude awakening!
And this is where things get really interesting.
Yeah, the contrast between what Marie expected and the reality of her marriage.
Oh, it's stark. It's crucial to understanding the whole case.
Right. We've got sources detailing the arranged marriage,
Mm-hmm.
and Charles, her husband, really wasn't honest about his wealth.
Or the state of Le Glandier.
It was like a bait and switch. She thought she was getting a chateau,
I mean, instead...
a dilapidated mansion,
Okay.
overrun with rats, too, apparently.
Ugh, the rats. Can you imagine the disappointment, the isolation?
It's just heartbreaking. And the sources, they really capture Marie's despair.
Mm.
She even threatened suicide on her first night there.
That's how desperate she felt.
Trapped, alone, miles from home.
But then Charles, her husband, he reacts in a surprising way.
Right. He promises to make things better, even,
Treats her like a sister.
yeah, until she felt comfortable at Le Glandier.
It makes you wonder, though.
Does it ever?
Was he genuinely remorseful or just trying to get his hands on her dowry?
It's the question, isn't it?
We may never know for sure, but,
Okay, here's where things take a real turn.
Oh, yeah?
Charles gets sick
While he's in Paris.
after eating a cake that Marie sent him.
The infamous cake.
That's the one. Was it poisoned? On purpose.
Or was it just, food poisoning? That was pretty common back then.
Right. We can't forget the context.
Food-borne illnesses were everywhere.
So yeah, at first, Charles being sick, nobody really bats an eye.
But then
He comes back to Le Glandier.
it gets worse.
Much worse.
And that's when the whispers start.
Oh yeah.
People start noticing Marie trying to get her hands on arsenic.
For rat poison, she
Yeah.
said.
Sure.
But then there are claims of white powder seen in Charles's food.
Suspicious white powder.
And the sources really dive into this.
Oh, they do?
The suspicions, they're coming from Charles's family mainly.
They were already wary of Marie to begin with.
Oh, yeah.
And these incidents just fueled their belief that she was poisoning him.
Oh, so what do?
They try to keep her away from Charles.
Isolate her even more.
It's like you can feel the tension building.
The suspicion in the air.
Everyone watching each other.
Like a powder keg, just waiting to...
It's explode.
And then Charles dies.
And the accusations, ooh, they fly.
They sure do. And then remember, they find arsenic buried in the garden.
And a servant testifies that Marie told him to hide it there.
Oh, man. Talk about adding fuel to the fire.
At this point, public opinion has turned completely against Marie.
She was a villain in the eyes of the public.
A cold-blooded killer.
Before they even had any real evidence.
It happens all the time, doesn't it?
It really does. Public perception can change so fast.
Especially in a case like this.
It's sensational
Emphatic.
and full of mystery.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's amazing how quickly people can turn on someone, you know.
Oh, absolutely. Once the story takes hold, it's hard to change the narrative.
And in Marie's case, the story became a full-blown media frenzy.
It really did. She was all over the newspapers.
A tabloid sensation. They ate it up. All the drama.
Well, she was young, beautiful, and let's be honest, her courtroom appearances were pretty theatrical.
Oh, yeah. Talk about playing into the narrative.
Fainting spells, smelling salts, being carried in on a settee.
Like something out of a play.
It was a spectacle for sure. But amidst all the drama, something important happened.
Okay, what's that?
Science entered the courtroom.
Ooh, this is where the Marsh test comes in, right?
You got it. A brand new technology at the time. It could detect even tiny amounts of arsenic.
Cutting-edge stuff. So they tested Charles's body, right?
They did. They exhumed his body specifically to perform the Marsh test.
Can you imagine the tension in the courtroom? Everyone waiting for the results?
Oh, I bet it was palpable.
Right.
And then the result came back. No arsenic.
No arsenic. Wait, so does that mean Marie was innocent?
Well, it wasn't quite that simple. Remember, this is early forensic science.
All right, things were a lot different back then.
The Marsh test was revolutionary, but it wasn't foolproof. There was always the possibility of error.
So even with a negative result, there was still doubt.
Exactly. And of course, the prosecution wasn't satisfied. They wanted a second opinion.
And that's where Matthew Orfila enters the picture.
The big guns. Orfila was like a celebrity chemist. He was considered the foremost expert on arsenic poisoning.
Wow, so his word carried a lot of weight.
Oh, absolutely. When he took the stand, everyone was hanging on his every word. It was a turning point in the trial.
So what did Orfila find? Did he confirm the Marsh test results?
Well, he was very meticulous, described his whole process, how he avoided any contamination.
That's important, right? Especially back then.
Crucial. And after all that, he declared that he had found arsenic in Charles's remains.
He did. So Marie was guilty after all. Case closed.
Oh, there's a twist. He only found a tiny amount, like 0.5 milligram.
Half a milligram. Is that even enough to be, like, conclusive?
That's a good question, and it's one that people debated at the time.
So even with Orfila's testimony, there was still some uncertainty.
There was. Remember Francois Raspel, the chemist who we talked about earlier?
Yeah, the one who questioned some of Orfila's methods.
That's him.
Yeah.
Well, he publicly challenged Orfila's findings in this case.
Oh, wow. So he basically said Orfila was wrong.
He argued that the amount of arsenic was too small to be conclusive. He suggested that contamination during testing was a real possibility.
So even the smoking gun might have been tainted.
It's possible, and that's what makes the Lafarge case so fascinating. It's not a clear-cut answer.
It's more about the limitations of science, especially back then.
Exactly. It's a reminder that even with new technologies, human error and interpretation still play a huge role.
So what happened next? With Orfila's testimony, what was the verdict?
Well, despite the doubts raised by Raspel, the jury found Marie guilty of murder.
They did.
Wow.
And what was her sentence?
Life imprisonment with hard labor.
Life imprisonment. That's harsh, especially with all the questions surrounding the evidence.
It really shows how much weight Orfila's testimony carried, and it's also an early example of what we now call the CSI effect.
The CSI effect. What's that?
It's the idea that because of TV shows, people have this unrealistic expectation that science can always provide a definitive answer.
Oh, I see what you mean, like a smoking gun that solves the case without a doubt.
Exactly. But as we've seen in the Lafarge case, things are rarely that simple. There's always room for doubt, for human error, for different interpretations.
So even with a scientific breakthrough, like the Marsh test, the truth can still be elusive.
It can. And that brings us to another intriguing aspect of this case. What if Marie wasn't the one who poisoned Charles?
Wait, are you saying there might be another suspect? Okay, so who else could it have been? Do we have any other suspects?
Well, there's a theory about Charles's clerk, Denis Barbier.
Oh, yeah. He was the one who went and got that arsenic, right? The one Marie said was for the rats.
Exactly. Some people believe that Barbier might have poisoned Charles himself.
What? Why would he do that?
Well, some sources hint that Charles was involved in some shady business deals.
Like what?
Maybe even forgery, and Barbier was in on it.
So if Charles died...
Barbier would inherit the business.
And all those secrets.
Gone. No one left to expose him.
That's a pretty good motive, I guess.
And let's not forget, Barbier had access.
Oh, yeah, he was Charles' clerk, right?
Exactly. He was in and out of the house all the time. Could have easily slipped something into Charles's food or drink.
And he was the one who physically handled the arsenic, too.
Exactly. He could have swapped it out, gave Marie something harmless, and kept the real poison for himself.
Well, it's like he framed her.
That's the theory.
But did anyone ever investigate Barbier?
Not really. Everyone was so focused on Marie, especially after Orfila's testimony. Poor guy never really stood a chance.
It's amazing how one case can have so many twists and turns and unanswered questions.
It really is, and that's what makes the case of Marie Lafarge so captivating, even after all these years.
So was she a victim of circumstance? A manipulative mastermind? Did someone else poison Charles?
We may never know for sure.
But that's part of the mystery, right?
Absolutely. It challenges you to look at the evidence and come to your own conclusions.
And it reminds us that even with all the advancements we've made in forensic science, the truth can still be elusive.
Oh, absolutely. Science can only tell us so much. The rest is up to interpretation. And sometimes there just aren't easy answers.
Well, I don't know about you, but this deep dive has really got me thinking.
Me too. It's a story that stays with you, you know?
It does, and it makes you realize that history is full of these complex cases where we might never know the whole truth.
And that's okay. Sometimes the not knowing is what keeps us curious, what keeps us asking questions.
Exactly. So what do you think happened to Marie Lafarge? Was she a cold-blooded killer or a victim of circumstance? Let us know in the comments below. And be sure to subscribe for more captivating deep dives into history, science, and beyond.
We'll see you next time.